I would think. I mean, there would be times when you would want to do copy paste. I could see that, but it seems to me there'd be times where you'd want to, if that was a code that's being reused a lot, you would want to wrap it up and put it as a function call. Are we talking about different things, or it's just the pressures of time to market that they don't really have time to make it a cleaner solution?
It's always the time to market, or getting the project done, or reaching some specific milestone that pushes you in not having the most elegant solution. Sometimes it's also a matter of experience, like you don't have enough experience to see that it could be done differently. It happens, like in the software world, there is this concept of design patterns where you don't actually copy paste or reuse things, but you have like kind of patterns, like how something should be solved, and it's good. It's a good thing in the education of every software engineer to go through design patterns and to understand all sorts of architectures and to have them, as skills, and to recognize when they have a problem or when they have to solve something that, okay, this looks like a pattern, a well-known pattern, so probably I should structure it or solve it like this by using this set of classes, this set of relationships, and architect it like this, and I avoid all sorts of potential issues because other guys have been there and devised that. But it may happen that you don't have the top developers at hand to devise such solutions. Also, it can happen that you cannot see upfront everything. So you have a solution now, but in time the requirements evolve, and you cannot write it again from scratch. So you adapt it, and at the end it may look very twisted. And you copy from here, you copy from there, you kind of patch things, and
Frankenstein. Okay, I get it. How do you deal with it?
Preventing it is very difficult. It's close to impossible because, as I said, it's a mean to get things done, and you just do it. It's not like, or if there are two different teams developing the same thing in parallel, okay, you cannot prevent it unless you would have an ideal communication, ideal sharing, and which, we don't live in an ideal world. So I think you can look at it as something that is more or less inevitable, given time pressure or resource pressure. So you could try to cure it, which is not, ideal, but this means that that's practically in the process of software development or like verification environment development, you should have some way of detecting such issues and then going through some redesign cycles if the manager approves them. But one important step is to be able to realize that you have these issues. And this is why we introduced these code duplication rules. So you run this set of checks over your code, and it tells you like you duplicated these functions or you duplicated this amount of code, and at least you get a picture of how much is duplicated, and then you can, based on the available resources that you have, decide that, okay, this is worth redesigning, and this is okay, let's leave it for now. Maybe there are areas where you don't really want to unify things, like either in a function or like using inheritance or other patterns, because you anticipate that there will be a functional split later on, and you don't want to lock yourself into a common function, because later on you'll say, anyway, I will have to again split it because here there will be a twist that. So there are technical decisions and managerial decisions in terms of resources. So you need to have this kind of process that runs and at least gives you the metrics, and then you can decide. And this you do typically with linters, with tools that this can be automated. So you cannot, let's say, automate the prevention side of the story, like somehow, like not to allow the guy to. It's very interesting. I saw something. There was an experiment done. They removed the copy-paste functionality from editors on purpose when doing some training, and they wanted to understand if there is an impact on the learning curve if you have and if you don't have copy-paste. And they discovered that if you don't have copy-paste, you learn much more. Why? Because you cannot copy-paste like using shortcuts like in your editor, and you have to rewrite. So even if you have to rewrite, you go through the effort of writing even if you are copy pasting, but you type, and you are forced in a way to read or like what you are typing, and this makes you aware in a way of even the act of copy pasting. So we could say that this is a prevention but it's not really, because you can, still duplicate it. So it's good to have this process of preventing, and this is what we just introduced at this DAC, this code duplication detection. And we are eager to see how much duplicate code is out there.
I'm sure no one would want to share that, but it still would be an interesting value to have a handle on in some nameless, aggregated sort of way.
Right. Yeah. Some guys could use it even to detect plagiarism, right? So who knows?
Yes. Plagiarism. Well, I'm glad we don't have that problem in our industry. So as I understand it, this is part of your existing Verissimo offering, right? Is there some other things there that we should be aware of?
Yes, we have. Verissimo is a linter. It's oriented on system Verilog, so on the software side of all this language, on the verification side. That's why it's called Verissimo System Verilog Test Bench Linter. And it has rules that target different areas. So we have rules that detect performance issues. We have rules that detect dead code. It's also an interesting
dead code that's in there but not used. Is that
not really used? Yes, it can happen either as a result of a copy paste or as a result of several redesign cycles, and you forget that you had a couple of variables there that you no longer need, or you had designed a couple of functions and you forgot about them, or maybe you just, who knows, you really forgot to call them. Actually, they are there, and you said okay. So it's like, okay, they should have been used, but I forgot to, or I missed something. So we have this dead code and language pitfalls detections, like when you override all sorts of functions, you are supposed to declare them virtual, like there are object-oriented patterns and things like that. So there are hundreds of rules in the linter for all sorts of things. But since we have users that they use it more and more, and they get creative, because once you have a tool that is capable of doing an audit on your code and flag all sorts of things, they kind of say, okay, why not check also this? How about going into that area? So, yeah, there is a lot of work still to be done, which is fun. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you're very responsive then to the user input. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, John, and let's see what the future will bring us.
Excellent.